Good afternoon to all of you. I know that it's lunchtime, so I'll try not to prolong too much my intervention, but I would like, of course, to start by saying how honored and pleased I'm here with you today at the invitation of Father Joe Lopez, whom I would like to thank very much for this opportunity to be here today to celebrate what brings together Portugal, Singapore, and the Catholic community living here. I would like to recognize the presence of the Ambassador of Mexico, who is the Dean of our diplomatic corps here in Singapore, and the Ambassador of Peru, my two friends, Ambassador Agustin and Ambassador Francisco. Thank you very much for being here. And thank you very much also for the presence of the Eurasian Association, and here my good friend Percy Shepherdson, and the representative of the Buddhist Association, and all of you here, and all of you here who are just because you are here because you are friends of this church, of history, and you would like you'd like to hear from me a bit about the story of my fellow ancestors. So I will try, although I have to make an initial disclaimer. I'm not here representing any view of my authorities, of the Portuguese authorities, or transmitting any official position of Portugal regarding what I'm going to say. What I'm going to share with you is what I've read, especially James Boss' book, but also you have a fantastic edition, a note on the Archdiocese of Singapore on both Father Maya and José de Almeida by, I forgot the names, I'm terrible, but I wanted just to mention the name because it's fair to say it. It is Martin Scott, and also I would like to mention that there are other very important authors who have written about that, in particular in the National Library, Mr. Ong Eng Xuan, and I could also mention others who have also contributed here. So it's on the basis, of course, of these readings, but most importantly also out of the visit I made here at the beginning of the year with Father, at the invitation of Father Joe Lopez, and we were together with Ambassador Francisco Peña at that time. I arrived in Singapore in last August, so I have less than a year here. It's my first ambassadorship, and I wasn't expecting really to find so many Portugal, or so much of my country here in Singapore, and especially in this place in St. Joseph's Church. So it is, I would say, a coincidence, a very joyous coincidence that I'm arriving here at a time where we are celebrating the 200 years of the arrival of two very famous pioneers, as you have mentioned, Father Joe on the one hand, Father Pinto y Maia, Francisco da Silva Pinto y Maia, and on the other hand, José de Almeida Carvalho y Silva, both made here a very significant, remarkable contribution to Singapore in the first and second quarter of the 19th century. Father Joe, you have mentioned with great detail the story about Father Pinto y Maia. I just wanted to make a little bit a reference to what Sir José de Almeida did here in Singapore, because they arrived more or less at the same time in 1825. Father Pinto y Maia arrived in June on the 30th, so we are celebrating exactly in 2 weeks his arrival here to Singapore, and Sir José de Almeida came in December, I think, 1825. So please correct me if I say anything which is not correct or accurate. But there is another coincidence. We are celebrating this week on the 10th of June, so it was on Tuesday, our National Day. It's on the 10th of June. And the ambassador here, the dean, I couldn't invite everybody who was representing the whole diplomatic community, was present at the inauguration of the new premises of the embassy here in Singapore. Because we have now also the trade agency who was closed 10 years ago. We reopened it, and so to accommodate the trade agency, we had to move into other premises in the same building. And so we decided to commemorate our National Day and the inauguration on the same occasion, with the presence of Father Joe also, who was with us. Why? Because in this new embassy, we have the portrait of Sir José de Almeida. And I'll explain why we have this portrait there. But Portuguese, the 10th of June, it's the day of Portugal, of our poet, Camões, who arrived to Asia 500 years ago, and whose inspiration actually was from Asia to write his most famous poem, Lusíadas. So you see, it's a year of birthdays, and all related to Portugal, Asia, Singapore. So I'm really fortunate to be celebrating so many important dates, and I would say this is the Dalmeida week, the Pinto e Maia week in Singapore. I feel really blessed to have this opportunity to share a bit of the observation I've made, because I don't know if the story of Sir José de Almeida and Father Pinto e Maia are that well known in Singapore. I can tell you that they are not well known in Portugal, which is a pity, which is something I'm going to try to remedy, and that's why I asked our Deputy Secretary General of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs to come all over from Lisbon here to inaugurate our embassy and to listen about these two Portuguese members of our community on the day where we celebrate our communities abroad and our culture. Communities abroad, if I may, because I just wanted to give you also this context. We have 10 million of Portuguese living in Portugal, but 6 million abroad. So we are a country of diaspora. And of these 6 million, about 1,000 live here in Singapore. And they live in Singapore, and this represents the biggest community of Portuguese citizens living in the ASEAN countries. Probably you didn't know it, we don't know it as much, but they are here. But they didn't arrive now. They arrived, some of them, I would say the majority 200 years ago, and maybe some of them 400 years ago, when there were only 100 people here in Singapore. We don't know, because we were in Malacca. We chose Malacca, but then we realized that we should have also invested earlier here in Singapore. Sometimes we know afterwards. But, and this is where José de Almeida was a visionary at that time. José de Almeida, so to start with his story very quickly, he graduated in medicine in Coimbra, which is the most famous university in Portugal. And immediately after graduating, he decided to come to Asia. So he directed the hospital of San Rafael in Macau. He was a naval surgeon. So he started to work in the Navy, and then he moved to Macau to become the director of San Rafael Hospital. And as Father Joe alluded, in 1820, we had a liberal revolution in Portugal. So against the king, who was considered to be absolutist, Miguel. And so José de Almeida decided to join the liberals in fighting against the establishment in Macau. But he lost, because the governor, the Viceroy of India, who was the Portuguese Viceroy of India, who was based in Goa, dispatched a military force to Macau in 1823 to finish with this rise of this liberal movement. And they arrested José de Almeida, who was the director of the hospital, and sent him to jail to Goa. But, and this is why I thought he was visionary, while he was sailing as a Navy surgeon, he came often through the straits, and he thought that this land here, Singapore, had such a strategic location that he said, let me invest here. So he gave money to the son-in-law of the first commander of Singapore at that time, Farquhar, to Francis James Bernard. He gave him money, and he told him, just buy me a piece of land and build me a house. One day, who knows, maybe I'll need it. I'll use it. This is the vision he had. And while in jail in Goa, he met whom? He met Pinto Imaya, Father Pinto Imaya, who was also with the liberals. And he was expelled from Macau, where he was the rector of St. Joseph College. Sorry, thank you for telling me. So, and that's why it's called St. Joseph here. As you said, he was from the order of St. Vincent. He was of the congregation of the mission, so St. Vincent, and he was expelled and jailed in Goa with Sir José de Almeida. And both of them thought, well, if we manage to escape, and they escaped eventually to Calcutta, maybe we'll go somewhere called Singapore, because there is somebody there called Sir Raffles, and apparently he's needing surgeons and doctors. That's what I do. I'm a surgeon and doctor, said Sir José de Almeida. And Father Pinto Imaya said, and maybe there are some Christians there where I could also go and do my job. So actually, Father Pinto Imaya came earlier in June, and José de Almeida arrived in December. And José de Almeida, where did he go? Of course, to the house that he asked Bernard to buy him some years before. Where was the house located? On Beach Road, just here. So, and as a surgeon, what did he do? As he did in Macau, he transformed his house as a first dispensary, first hospital here in Singapore. And he treated the patients of all the kind of diseases of that time, and I can imagine malaria, dengue, etc. And he did his job as a doctor. But one day, two ships actually had problems here in the Straits, one Portuguese and one Spanish. And they have the cargo with perishable goods on them. And they said we had to immediately release and sell these goods so that you don't lose all the investment we've done. And to whom they asked some support? To José de Almeida. So from a surgeon, he became a trader, a merchant. And he decided, so that's why he created the Almeida & Co. company, which was one of the first companies here in Singapore. And he invited one of his sons, the eldest, Joaquin, to join him. So the company became the Almeida & Son, and later & Sons, when the second son, José, also joined. But José de Almeida wasn't very much interested in trade. He was more as a doctor interested by science. He was a botanist. So very intrigued about the flora here in Singapore. And so he decided to set the Society of Agriculture and Horticulture here of Singapore, which eventually led to the creation of the Botanic Garden. And in his research, he discovered the property of the gutta percha. You've heard about gutta percha, which is the origin of rubber and of latex. He's not the only one. It's also Montgomery. So I don't know if there are historians here in the room, but if I say something which is not scientifically proved, please bear with me, correct me, and I invite historians to dwell into history and do the job that I haven't done, which is identify the sources and correct everything so that we can have the proper history told. But so for the time being, I take it as correct that he was the one with Montgomery who found the properties of gutta percha, which so gave the industry of rubber and latex here in the region. So we saw him as a surgeon, as a trader, as a botanist, but he was also a philanthropist. He saw his good friend, Father Maya, celebrating Mass at the beginning on the beach. 10, 12 people, and then to the sailors coming by the ships and making a stopover here. They went to church. And he was also celebrating Mass at the beginning on the beach, then on a small chapel, and eventually he bought lands, as you have mentioned. They built the first church, but then they needed to expand. And so Sir José de Almeida decided, of course, as he had the possibility to do it, to help his friend and finance also and raise funds to create the second church. But unfortunately, none of them have seen this church because they died in 1850, and the church was inaugurated in 1853, if I'm correct, the second church. First, if we don't count the small chapels and the small, yeah, you're right. And so, thank you very much for that. But so Sir José de Almeida actually also contributed to St. Joseph building. And so, again, he was a surgeon, a doctor, a trader, a botanist, a philanthropist, and something which is very dear to us, diplomats, the first Consul General of Portugal to the Straits. So, you see, what else can he be here? I don't know. If he would have said a bit more, maybe, I don't know. He was everything at the same time, but he was General Consul, the first General Consul of Portugal to Singapore, so a fellow colleague. And that's why we are very pleased to have at the embassy his portrait. His portrait used to be in a restaurant that maybe some of you know, which is the Tuga restaurant. The Tuga restaurant. And the owner of the Tuga restaurant told me one day, because they closed it, they couldn't afford to keep the restaurant open for financial reasons. He told me we need to find a new home for Sir José. And I said, of course. So what do you think? I'm inaugurating a new embassy. Perfect home for him. So he will leave from the gastronomy embassy, which is Tuga, to the diplomatic embassy, which is our embassy. So we have him as a big portrait of Sir José de Almeida. Why, sir? Because he was knighted by our Queen Mary II. He was also knighted by the King of Spain. And because he had these titles, here the British establishment decided, well, he has these honors, let's call him Sir. So I'm not sure if he was knighted by the British. What I'm sure is that he was knighted by the Portuguese and the Spanish. And so that's why he's called Sir José de Almeida. Sir José de Almeida also gave his name to one street here that you all know, the Almeida Street, in the commercial business district, in the central business district. And he is buried here in Fort Canning. So not only Father Pinto Imaya is buried here in this church, in St. Joseph, he has his remains here, but also Sir José de Almeida is buried in Fort Canning in Singapore. Apparently the day of his funeral, the whole population was really in the procession and gave him a tribute for everything that he has done for Singapore. He had indeed a very large family, and some of them are descendants of this time, and they are still here in the society. Actually, I'm looking to the Eurasian. It's not only Dalmeida, which is a common name here in Singapore. You have Teixeira, you have de Souza, you have, you name them. Because indeed, sorry, Pereira, yes. So if you visit the wonderful Heritage Gallery at the Eurasian Association, you will see the evolution and how the Portuguese presence is still here. So I wanted to highlight that. I wanted to highlight also the fact that in this church, you have mentioned, Father Joe, the history of the relationship and how the Catholic Portuguese mission, which was created on 30th of June 1825 until 1999, when Macau went back to China. Why? Because it was the Archbishop of Macau who had the jurisdiction here over Singapore until 1981, as you mentioned, until the diocese was under the leadership of the Archbishop of Singapore. But the mission was terminated in 1999. But as you have mentioned, in 1888, the Pope indeed resolved these, I would say, differences of interpretation as a diplomat between French and Portuguese. I will not here fight. I will not present any view that tomorrow my French colleague will ask me some explanation. And we are here with the Spirit of the Lord and all blessed, and I'm not here trying to compete, but it's true that the Paris Foreign Mission had its role here in Singapore, but also the Portuguese mission also had its role here. And that's why the Pope did, as we diplomats do, compromise and find a common solution. So he led the jurisdiction over Singapore and Malacca to what we call the Royal Padroado, and left the Paris Foreign Mission to the propagation of the faith propaganda, as it was called at that time. And that was the division of I would say, jurisdictions. Correct me if I'm wrong. And so how it, at the end of the day, this developed. I don't know if it's true, and I've read also somewhere that Father Pinto y Maya also acquired the lands where the Cathedral of the Good Shepherd is built today. I don't know. I read somewhere that if he didn't buy it, at least he protected the land because it was given by the governor to establish a church. So I don't know. This is something I leave to historians, whether Father Pinto y Maya also bought the land where, or took care of the land where the Cathedral of the Good Shepherd has been built. I basically wanted to share this history with you because it brings us together. It brings us together, be it Portuguese, Spanish, the Latin American community, the French community, all the Catholics here of Singapore, and we had the pleasure, the honor to have the Pope, late Pope, coming here to Singapore. But to tell you that it's a blessed land, I'm very happy that on my arrival in September, the Pope was coming also here. So all these coincidences are fabulous. And another coincidence which is fabulous, I'm a profound admirer of Our Lady of Fatima. And I've never seen in any place, only here, the celebration of the 30th of every month being done as it's done here. It's on all 13th. So in Portugal, we only do it in May and October. Only in Singapore, you took it to the next level. So and another coincidence, yesterday it was the 13th of June. What is the 13th of June? You'll tell me San Antonio. Where does he come from? I don't want to conflict with my Italian colleague, but he does not come from Padua, but from Lisbon. I'm sorry, he was born in Lisbon. Yeah. So San Antonio that we celebrated yesterday, he is very dear to Portugal, to Lisbon, because he's the saint patron of Lisbon. And the saint patron of my mother, when she loses something, she always prays to him. And she always finds things to him. And don't bother him for everything. For every second you lose something, he has many other things to do. So I'm very happy that we also have Saint Joseph here, Saint Anthony, but also other saints that we have here in the church, namely Nuno Dalvas Pereira, who is the Santo Contestável, who is also present here. So as Father Joe mentioned, I feel here home. I feel like in Little Portugal. This is actually the neo-Manueline style. this church has been built with the neo-Manueline style. And another coincidence, and with that I promise I stop unless you want me to continue, but the lady who took care of the restoration of the statues just happened to be Portuguese. Her name is Machado, Filipa Machado. And he won the prize here of the Architectural Association. Why? Because one day she was walking here and saw that this church was under restoration. She was here with her husband, but she was not working. She's specialist in restoration. And so she opened the door and asked, do you need by chance any restoration specialist? I am one, I can help you. And I know if it were you or your predecessor. And they said, yes, we need one, but can you handle 38 statues? She said, yes. So she handled the 38 statues and she gave back the color of those statues. So I don't know if this is a divine intervention or not, but to have a Portuguese crossing on the street, enter the church, and I don't know. I just leave it as this, as an observation, but it was a Portuguese who take care of what was done one of those ancestors. So, Father Joe, you are Spanish, I'm Portuguese, we are Latin American, we are French, Italian. We are a community. What I wanted to say is that and we are Singaporeans and Eurasians. What I wanted to tell and to share with you as an ambassador is the pride I have to serve here and to see how in coming together, in doing things together, in believing in the same things, we can do things that will last forever, forever. And that's why I think that Singapore is proving to the world when communities work for a common purpose and take the best of them, they can achieve the best. So I just wanted to say that because, of course, we can rewrite history and we can always find in history mistakes which have been done and really things that shouldn't have happened. But I take the good side of history. And what I take as a good side of history is that we are present here today talking about what happened 400, 200 years ago. And it was done in a pacific way, despite the small minor incidences. And we are here today to celebrate this friendship between Portugal, Singapore, Spain, France, Latin America, Mexico, Peru, and all who are here today. Thank you very much for having listened to me. I'm ready to take your questions if you have some. Thank you very much.